Ready? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled meeting of Taber Town Council for September the 9th, 2019. First off, we have 3 public hearings to take care of, as well as a subdivision authority meeting before we get to our actual regular council agenda. So I'd first call the first hearing to order, dealing with bylaw 3-2019. Members of the public in attendance who wish to speak against or for proposed bylaw number 3-2019 will have a 10-minute limit for speaking. And anyone who does wish to come forward and speak must state their full name for the record. Item 2 is dealing with bylaw 3-2019. Mr. Armfield?
Yes, I'm going to call Ms. Monks up to give a presentation. This has to do with a road closure bylaw for council's information.
All right, thank you. Ms. Monks?
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. So administration has received an application from Martin Geomatics on behalf of Summit Motors to facilitate a closure of a lane and construction of a new portion of road in order to redirect traffic near their business. The lane closure will close access through the site from the service road. The lane from Heritage Drive to the existing back lane by the residential lots will be constructed. The application's been circulated along with a supporting subdivision application to the adjacent landowners. A homeowner came in to express a concern regarding potential truck traffic using the laneway and accessing through to Heritage Drive. So we've discussed that concern with the applicant. They will be providing a traffic plan that will reflect the ability for turnaround of heavy trucks to be occurring on their site, and a fence will be constructed to prevent shortcutting. First reading of the road closure bylaw was given by Resolution 477-2019 at the August 19th council meeting. This public hearing is the opportunity for anyone with concerns or comments respecting this application to present them to council for consideration. The application will be forwarded to the minister for approval prior to coming back to council for second and third reading. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Has the Plan and Economic Development Office received any written briefs against proposed bylaw number 3-2019? All right, thank you. Is anyone present who wishes to speak against bylaw 3-2019? Anyone wishing to speak against bylaw 3-2019 a second time? And anyone wishing to speak against bylaw 3-2019 a third and final time? All right, seeing none. Presentation related to oral briefs. Has anyone attended to the Plan and Economic Development Office received any written briefs for the proposed bylaw 3-2019? No. All right. Is anyone present who wishes to speak for proposed bylaw number 3-2019? Anyone present wishing to speak for proposed bylaw number 3-2019 a second time? And anyone present wishing to speak for proposed bylaw number 3-2019 third and final time? All right. Seeing none. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Chavez.
Just as a point here, under subject public hearing, it notarizes 2109. It should be 2019. It's just a reverse and a typo there.
Thank you. My apologies.
And then I'll make the motion that the council accepts information provided at the public hearing for the road closure bylaw 3-2019.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Ms. Monks, any financial implications on the part of the town in this situation?
No, there won't. Through the chair. No, there won't be that we can take into consideration at this point. The roadway that we close will be turned back to the applicant. However, they will be constructing a new roadway in replacement of that to the town standards.
Mayor.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And I hereby close this public hearing. On to public hearing number 2 related to bylaw 13-2019. Call that meeting to order. And again, once again, members of the public in attendance who wish to speak against or for proposed bylaw number 13-2019 will have a 10-minute limit for speaking, and anyone who wishes to come forward and speak must state their full name for the record. Proposed bylaw 13-2019. Mr. Armfield?
Yes, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Monks again. This is a map amendment in Prairie Lake subdivision. Ms. Monks.
At the August 19th, 2019 regular meeting of council, Resolution 478/2019 was passed, giving first reading to Bylaw 13/2019, which is a map amendment to the land use bylaw in order to change the zoning of a single lot in the Prairie Lake subdivision. The applicant has applied for a subdivision lot line amendment separate from this land use amendment in order to adjust the lotting of 3 lots to change them from irregular shaped pie lots into rectangular lots accessed from Prairie Lakes Drive. The corner lot in question is currently set for access from Prairie Sunset Avenue, but is separated from the other lots on that street by a pathway. This amendment and the future relotting will have little impact to those currently designated as R1. The application was circulated to adjacent properties and no comments or concerns have been identified. This public hearing is the opportunity for anyone with concerns or comments respecting this application to present them to council for consideration. Administration is supportive of this amendment.
Great, thank you. And once again, has the Plan and Economic Development Office received any written briefs against proposed bylaw number 13-2019? All right. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak against proposed bylaw number 13-2019? Anyone wish to speak against proposed bylaw number 13-2019 for a second time? And anyone wish to speak against proposed bylaw number 13-2019 the third and final time? All right, seeing none. Related to oral briefs, has the Plan and Economic Development Office received any written briefs for proposed bylaw 13-2019? All right, thank you. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak for proposed bylaw number 13-2019? Anyone present wishing to speak for proposed bylaw number 13-2019 the second time? And anyone present wishing to speak for proposed bylaw 13-2019 the third and final time? All right, seeing none, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
If I can make that motion, the council accepts the information provided at this public hearing for consideration.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I hereby close this public hearing. And the third and final public hearing for today, related to bylaw 17-2019. I call this public hearing meeting to order. Once again, members of the public in attendance who wish to speak against or for proposed bylaw number 17-2019 will have a 10-minute limit for speaking, and anyone who does wish to come forward and speak must state their full name for the record. Proposed bylaw number 17-2019. Mr. Armfield.
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Monks again. This is a text amendment in the land use bylaw.
All right, thank you, Ms. Monks.
Bishop and members of council. This amendment to the land use bylaw is to correct a minor error with regard to the previous land use redesignation of RC1 and RC2 uses for condominium development in our previous land use bylaw. In the new version, these designations were rezoned as R4 or Residential Medium Density District, which was intended to be a similar use. In the changes that occurred, the ability to allow for the construction of a single detached dwelling in the district was inadvertently removed. In order to ensure that the existing sites within town that are zoned under this land use to be in compliance with the bylaw rather than legal non-conforming, and to allow for vacant lots in these districts to be developed in the manner that was intended for them, administration would request to amend the definition of multi-residential development to allow single detached dwelling, as well as the note within the R4 land use itself to reflect the same. This will alleviate any future concerns for homeowners and applicants in these areas and prevent any unnecessary delays if an application should come forward in these districts. First reading of this bylaw occurred with Resolution 479/2019 at the regularly scheduled August 19th meeting of Council, and the public hearing today is the opportunity for anyone with concerns or comments respecting this application to present them to Council for consideration.
Thank you. And once again, has the Plan and Economic Development Office received any written briefs against proposed bylaw 17-2019? Thank you. Is anyone present who wishes to speak against proposed bylaw number 17-2019? Anyone present wishing to speak against proposed bylaw number 17-2019 the second time? And anyone present wishing to speak against proposed bylaw number 17-2019 the third and final time? All right, seeing none. Ms. Monks, the Plan and Economic Development Office received any written briefs for proposed bylaw 17-2019? All right, thank you. Anyone present who wishes to speak for proposed bylaw number 17-2019? Anyone present wishing to speak for proposed bylaw number 17-2019 the second time? And anyone present wishing to speak for proposed bylaw number 17-2019 a third and final time? All right, seeing none, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council accepts the information provided at this public hearing for consideration.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And I hereby declare this public hearing closed. On to the subdivision authority meeting. Call that meeting to order and ask for an adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item number 3.1, adoption of the minutes, regular meeting of Subdivision Authority, August 19th, 2019. Mr. Armfield.
You have the meeting minutes in front of you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Anything arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Subdivision Authority held on August 19th, 2019 as presented.
All right, thank you. That's the motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 4, subdivision applications. 4.1, subdivision TT 19-0-005. Mr. Armfield.
Ms. Monks, if you might come back. This is a subdivision related to the public hearing that you just heard for the map amendment.
All right, thank you, Ms. Monks.
Administration has received an application for subdivision in order to realign the property lines of 3 lots in Prairie Lakes adjacent to Prairie Lake Drive. One of these lots is also the subject of that Land Use Bylaw Amendment 13/2019. The applicant is requesting to relot the 3 parcels to 3 rectangular-shaped lots accessed from Prairie Lake Drive rather than 2 smaller lots and 1 large corner lot. The conditions of subdivision are worded in such a manner that if the Land Use Bylaw Amendment does not proceed, the subdivision conditions cannot be met and the subdivision will not be able to be registered. The application has been circulated to adjacent neighbors and advertised in the Tabor Times for 2 consecutive weeks, and no concerns have been received. The application was reviewed by the Municipal Planning Commission at the July 8th meeting and recommended for approval. The subdivision will have little impact on the adjacent neighbors, as it is separated from those developed along Prairie Sunset Avenue by a pathway. Administration is supportive of this application and would recommend approval by the subdivision authority.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion. I move the subdivision authority approve subdivision application TT 19-0-005, lot 12, block 5, plan 161-1498, and lots 15 and 16, block 5, unregistered plan by DJ Amatea within northwest quarter section of 6, Township 10, Range 16, west of the 4th Meridian, Surveyor's file number 16-13262, with the following conditions informative as provided 1 through 7.
All right, thank you. A motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I just asked for a motion to close the meeting. Councillor Garner. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to the regular scheduled Tabor Town Council meeting. Call that meeting in order and ask for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we proceed with adoption of the agenda, I'd like to ask the question of administration regarding item 9.3, closed session, and explanation why is in closed session, please.
Mr. Armfield.
Through to Mr. Mayor. During our conversation, Councillor Becking, that the mayor and I had in preparation of the agenda, we go through every item and consider where it should be located on the agenda, whether it's in open or closed. Through that discussion with the mayor, it was thought that this should be in closed session, and under section 24 within the FOIP Act, it indicates that information, including the proposed plans, policies, or projects of a public body, the disclosure of which could reasonably be expected to result in disclosure of a pending policy or budgetary decision, can be located in closed session. So essentially, there could be a budget consideration coming out of the conversation for this particular item. So it was directed to administration to prepare the agenda with this item in closed session.
Okay, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're all right with that?
Nope. Not much I could do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. All right, once again, ask for an adoption of the agenda as presented. Councillor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion we adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. On to item 3.1, adoption minutes of public hearing meeting of council August 19th, 2019. Mr. Armfelt.
Yes, the first official item on this agenda is the meeting minutes from August the 19th for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth?
Mr. Mayor, I move that council adopts the minutes of the public hearing meeting of council held on August 19th, 2019 as presented.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.2, minutes of regular meeting of council August 19th, 2019. Mr. Armfelt.
For your consideration, the regular meeting minutes of council from August the 19th.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on 19th August 2019 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 4, business arising, item 4.1, Connect app further research. Mr. Armfelt.
I'm going to call Mrs. Brennan to the podium to do some speaking on this item. At the last council meeting, it was directed back to administration to do some further research on this and come back with a recommendation. We have done that. Ms. Brennan, if you could share that information with council, please.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council. So following your tabling of this item at the August meeting, Mr. Armfelt and myself met with the MD staff on their ideas of the scope for this app. And I also spoke with our chiefs about their level of support for this technology. And you'll find our conversations distilled in the report attached to your agenda. To make a long story short, ultimately it comes down to the fact that this app is redundant to the technology that we already have through our brand new website and other apps that the government offers, so Alberta Emergency Alert, Alberta Wildfire, and the like. So ultimately, we would be paying double for almost the same technology minus a few different features, voicemail, for example, and the physical app itself. So it's my position and administration's recommending that we not move forward with this project.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Brennan or administration? Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Ms. Brennan. I really enjoyed reading your investigation. Job well done.
All right, anything else? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Your Worship. The council thanks the MD of Taber for the opportunity to partner with the Connect app project, but declines the offer to participate in this project at this time.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brennan. On to item 5, bylaws. Item 5.1, land use bylaw 13-2019, second and third reading. Mr. Armfelt.
Yes, if council has any questions about this item, please ask me. Maybe I'll ask Ms. Monks to come up if they're real tough questions, but otherwise the decision is yours for second and third reading.
Thank you. Any questions, anyone? All right, thank you. Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Stravas.
So I'm prepared to make that council give second reading to bylaw 13-2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third required bylaw reading. Councillor Bruin.
Make the motion, Mr. Mayor, that council gives a third reading to bylaw 13-2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.2, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 17-2019, second and third reading. Mr. Armfeldt.
Yeah, similarly, this is for council to consider second and third reading. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council give second reading to bylaw number 17-2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third required reading. Councillor Garner.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make that motion. The council gives third reading to bylaw 17-2019 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 5.3, fee bylaw 18-2019. Mr. Armfeldt.
Yes, Mr. Orwa is going to come up and present the fee bylaw to council. This is the first item in our preparation to budget for 2020. Mr. Orwa, if you'd like to kick us off.
Thank you very much, members of council. So we do have, council has previously adopted the fee bylaw 7-2019, but the administration has drafted a new fee bylaw for consideration, and I think this one should be effective January 1 of 2020. Now, to get everything rolling, there are some specific areas where some items have been deleted, some items have been added, and I think we'll go in order that we have on our RFD. So the first one, probably if there's any question, comes from recreation.
Councillor Beckery.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For council information, this particular fee bylaw 2020 was presented to our Recreation Board meeting last week, Wednesday, I believe it was, and it was accepted by the Recreation Board.
All right, thank you. Anything else to add to that, Mr. Orwa?
Nothing to add. Well, if recreation is fine, then I'll just move to the next one, which is planning.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not following what you're saying, Mr. Orwa.
So we have for Schedule A, within the
Yes.
fee bylaw, we have Schedule A
Okay.
for recreation,
I
which
see, yeah,
of
right.
course was passed by the Recreation Board. Then we go to Schedule B, which is now for planning. And
Very good.
planning, I think, had just one or two changes there. And if there are questions, probably have Ms. Monks to answer those questions as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the change, please?
Wait a second. So on the board, we have a few changes there that probably the first one, maybe you can talk about the first one, then the second one.
Right, so for the first, it's just relating to development permits. We had indicated additions and had their fees of 150 or 150 plus 200 if they were discretionary. And so what we had determined is an addition would just really fall under a development, and the amount of effort and staff time that is used for that would be dependent on how large the development was. So if the addition was between 500 meters squared or less, or if it was 501 we felt the easiest way was just to charge those existing development fees, because the same effort would happen even if it was an addition. So rather than having a separate addition, we felt it made more sense to fee it based on the size of the addition or development that was being considered.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Orwa.
Thank you very much. Did you want to explain the second one? There were
Right.
two changes there.
The only additional one was that we didn't have a fee for an intermunicipal development plan amendment. So we just wanted to add that in, and again, the amount of effort would be similar to any of our other statutory plans amendments that would occur. So we based it on that same amount, but wanted to have it in the bylaw.
All right, great, thank you. All right,
Then the next one is Schedule C, which is the corporate services, and that is my area. So I only made a very minor change there. I only added $5 to our tax certificates. It's been a while. The last almost 5-10 years, nothing has changed. And looking at our neighbors, Coaldale, even Lethbridge, they are in that ballpark. So I added $5 to our fee for the tax certificates. It's not a big revenue, but at least just to compensate for the losses we've had in the past few years.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. Mr. Roa.
Thank you very much. And then the next one is Schedule E, which is the utilities fee bylaw, and this is the big one. And from what you see on the board, we are reflecting the 3% increases as per administration's recommendation for council to deliberate upon. So looking at starting from the sanitary sewer rates, it's going to be 3% across the board, and all the 3% to all the areas. But there's some specific areas, 2 areas there that I would like Lisa to join me. Those are just the additions which were not there before.
Yes. So this is just a hauled septic, like residential septic tank to our treatment facility. We've never charged a service for that, I believe, unless they charge one when EPCOR was running it. But so far they've been able to haul commercial hauling to that location without any charges. So this would just be implementing a charge to recoup the treatment of that. We polled different municipalities and found that everyone was charging a disposal fee of some kind. So this is the one that we've determined that we're going to use.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Just a question, does this involve the sewer dump for the RV trailers?
No, it's just commercial hauling.
This is strictly commercial?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chavez.
One other question here to administration. So that's $4.50 per cubic meter. So what would that constitute for a truckload? I'm not quite sure how large are they different size, or are they standard trucks?
They're different sizes of trucks, but it's basically how much they've sucked out of the septic tank is what they're charging on.
It'd be different amounts then.
Yeah, it'd be what they're dumping, not the size of their truck.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For Councillor Stroh's information, a cubic meter is 220 gallons. Most trucks carry about 8 cubic meters, 2,000 gallons, 1,800 gallons, something like that.
Okay.
Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Yes, do we have a meter there then, or is it a card slot? How would they pay?
So they would have to contact us within 48 hours of, like with a bill of lading of what they dumped from that house or that property.
Okay, but how will you enforce it? What if someone dumps and doesn't call?
It is monitored, but it is reliant on them being.
On our system?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, Mr. Roa.
Just moving forward, still under utilities, the other area that's outside the 3% is also another one on the pickup fee. That's on commercial. If you could also talk about that.
So again, on our commercial pickup fee, we went and looked at 5 different municipalities and private contractors of commercial garbage bins and collection of those bins. And we're substantially lower for the service that we provide and have been for quite some time. And so we're just trying to update it to reflect the actual cost of that service.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions arising? All right, Mr. Roa.
Without any question there, the next item would be on commercial again. Talk about the flat rate.
That's the exact same reason for for communities that are providing commercial recycling bins as part of their recycling or their garbage program. Their fees are some are twice as much as ours, but ours are the lowest that I could find. So we're just trying to adjust that to recoup the cost, the actual cost.
Questions? Good, thank you, Mr. Roa.
So without questions there, the next item would be Schedule H. I don't know whether the chief is around. Yes, the chief would join me. There are a few changes there as well. Yes, please.
Your worship.
Chief, are you done?
So the main thing that we looked at was trying to become to bring our fees in alignment with fees that are being charged by other agencies across southern Alberta. And we actually haven't revisited our fee bylaw for a very long time. So we felt it was time to do that. One of the issues that we did put in that we're having a sober second thought about, to be frank with you, and I'd like your input, obviously it's your decision, is the $10 fee for volunteers for criminal record checks. That's something historically we haven't done, but it would bring in some revenue for us. But at our roundtable today, when we were going over our budget discussion with my senior management, we were worried that introducing that fee may actually reduce the number of volunteers that we may have in the community if they have to pay a fee. So that's something that we may want to pull off the table. But again, it's been presented to you, so that's, I guess, for you to decide, obviously. But other than that, I think the fees that we're asking to charge are in alignment with what other agencies are doing or lower, and I suggest that they're appropriate at this time.
All right, Councillor Chavez.
That's your worship. I would concur with the chief. Volunteers do a lot of work in this community. To charge them a $10 fee seems to be a little on the petty side. So I think when we make this motion, we should amend that to no fees charged for volunteer police information checks.
I would reiterate that same comment. That's for $10. What are we going to gain, right? For
$3,000.
$3,000. Okay. But yeah, considering what volunteers do for us, I don't think that's a major issue for sure to me. Councillor Becken?
Question been answered, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, any other questions arising? All right, thank you.
Thank you. May I be dismissed?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Roy?
Well, thank you, members of council. So that is all we had, the changes to the new draft fee bylaw.
Any other questions arising? Just we're all in agreement with that the $10 fee that was discussed there to take off, correct? So that needs to be in the motion, Mr. Armfeldt. Exactly.
Yeah, ideally you could put it in the motion to remove it. We'll make sure that when we bring this back for second and third reading, that has been removed. But
very good. Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Stravas.
Your worship, I'll make the motion that council gives first reading to fee bylaw 18/2019 at this meeting with the exclusion of the $10 volunteer fee service charge. Criminal record charge.
Correct. All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6, action item 6.1, budget process and timelines. Mr. Armfeldt.
yeah, leading off that last RFD, we have for your consideration the budget timeline for the 2023 municipal budget. Mr. Orwa.
Again, thank you, members of council. So again, approaching the budget season, and we're just giving you some timelines, what we expect between now until end of the year. And just for your information, we do have 2020 is our current budget moving forward. That is from next year. So we are expected by Municipal Affairs to have 3 years forecast. That's why we have the 2021, 22, and 23. So each year we'll be adding 1 more year because they want to see at least 23 years of forecast, but our current budget would be 2020. So we do have a timeline there just for council's information.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Whatsoever? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
Prepared to make a motion, Your Worship. The council accepts the proposed 2020-2023 budget framework document for information purposes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.2, appointment of local assessment review board. Mr. Armfeldt.
For council's information, we have had a couple of residents that have applied to appeal their taxes. And in doing so, we have to prepare to have a body that would hear that appeal. That body is designated by a motion of council. Mr. Orwa is here to make a presentation on who we feel that body should be, and then hoping to get council's blessing on that. Mr. Orwa?
Thank you very much again. So for the local assessment review board, so we'll have two individuals appealing. And since we don't have the board, we are contracting benchmark assessment. And for benchmark assessment, we are requesting council to appoint, first of all, the review clerk, and then also to appoint the review board members to attend the session. Now, attached to that list, you can see I have 6 board members. Now, by MGA Act, it will only be 3 that will be in attendance. But we are requesting that we appoint all these members because you never know, there could be changes in between or somebody might not be able to make it, but at least 3 of them will have to attend, to sit in.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? None whatsoever. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council approves the contracted use of Benchmark Assessment Consultants Incorporated for the purposes of assembling a local assessment review board for the town of Taber.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.3, encroachment agreements. Mr. Pardon me?
Second motion.
Oh. All right, sorry. I missed that second one. All right, someone prepared to make that motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the council appoints an assessment review board clerk and ARP members as per the attached list.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question for Mr. Orwa. How did you come up with this list of people?
Now, these are the board members that have been contracted by Benchmark. So it's now Benchmark by extension that are saying out of these 3 members will be attendance. But they can't just come in here until they're approved or appointed by the council.
Right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.3, encroachment agreements. Mr. Arfeld.
I believe this is one for Ms. Monks again. There's a commercial building being sold in the downtown, and the encroachment is beyond what administration can approve. So we're bringing it to council. Ms. Monks?
Yes, Your Worship and members of council, that is exactly it. A subdivision for Pro Performance Athletic was approved at the July 15th regular meeting of council. During the review process for the subdivision, it was determined that a portion of the building on lot 22 encroaches into the road allowance by 0.51 meters, and the brick walkway in front of the building on lot 23 encroaches 0.31 meters into the road allowance. So under our encroachment policy and our land use bylaw, both of these encroachments will require council consideration for approval. By approving this encroachment, the agreement can be entered into and then registered concurrently with the tentative plan of subdivision. The administration would recommend approval to allow the agreements to proceed.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council authorize the mayor and CAO to endorse the encroachment agreements for Pro Performance Athletic Center Limited regarding 5406A 50th Avenue, lots 22 and 23, Block 8, unregistered plan by Michael Thompson within Northwest Quarter Section 32, Township 9, Range 16, west of the 4th Meridian, Surveyor's File Number H10219.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Monks, if council would decide not to approve this, what would possibly happen?
Condition for subdivision could not be met, so we would not endorse that subdivision. It also poses other difficulties because the building is existing, and so we would be put in a situation where we would have to try to enforce that, and the building is existing. So.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.4, Halo Air Ambulance Program Funding. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, this has been put on the agenda essentially at your request, Mr. Mayor. I believe that you had attended a meeting with the Southern Alberta Mayors and Reeves, and this was an item on that agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to council to have a discussion about this one. There is a letter of support and then a motion of support that is being recommended here.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Strauss?
Your worship, I'm assuming there was some information that Halo made a presentation as far as their abilities to provide 24/7 service. I know they got a new helicopter now. Are they equipped with night vision? Can they fly 24/7?
I don't know about the night vision portion, to be honest, but it's a twin engine chopper compared to the single engines they've been using, and I believe it's close to $3 million bill for that particular chopper, and that's the difference with their budget shortfall.
And your worship, I understand that, and I know they provide a great service, and it's a great, it's something that's required. I'm just curious whether or not they've come forward so that they can service 24/7. Because if we're asking for money for $1 million a year for these people, can they fly 24/7 like Stars? I mean, do we need a second service that can only fly during the daytime hours? These are some of my concerns with this, because it certainly it inhibits them if they're getting that kind of money and if they can't fly at night.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know that question came up. Mr. Armfield, are you familiar with that at all?
No, I'm not familiar with the technical abilities of either.
I believe they can, but I don't know about their night vision. I think you asked there, but I believe they're flying 24 hours if need be, and they're covering the areas that Stars can't. Basically, so I guess just to give you the nutshell version.
Yeah, no, it's not that I'm not in favor of them, but I think I know we had a presentation here, I don't know, 6 months or so ago from Stars, and at that time there was some items addressed as far as that they didn't have these capabilities, and I'm just wondering with its new helicopter if these shortcomings have been addressed.
It was really just an information for the rest of council and/or some discussion, but the shortfall was $750,000. I believe you're aware, and through Mayors and Reeves, they authorized to do a blanket letter back to the UCP party and the Premier to cover that money. But since then, there's been a $50,000
donation from the Eastern River Irrigation District,
County of 40 Mile, actually. Yeah.
And
that's the only thing I'm aware of. But again, so I don't know. But again, it was more information for council and any other discussion. Councillor Tams?
It is addressed in their letter. The letter that they wrote to Southern Alberta Mayors and Rears, where they had to have a twin-engine helicopter and an extended daylight operating hours.
So that means they can only fly in the daytime then?
Yeah, extended daylight operating hours. Doesn't say night.
Extended daylight.
So I'm just wondering, we got a service that we still got to rely on Stars to go into those areas if something happens to the nighttime.
But as I understand it, they can't get there. That's the issue. So I don't know.
Well, no, Stars can, but they have to refuel. But if you got a ground ambulance that can't go, or an air ambulance that can't go after dark, you still have to rely on Stars to come out then.
Basically, it's this is just an information session and/or discussion on the updates on where we're at with this, and it was Halo's ask. It's a fairly large ask, obviously.
Well, it is, and and it's taxpayers' dollars, and I think we all have to be wary of those taxpayers' dollars. But
I think they were, I believe it's October 1st, Mr. Armfield, was next negotiating start for their next contract with Halo.
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
So it was the August and September were the shortfall months, and since then I understood that our MLA and our Minister Hunter was going to have some more information for us, but I haven't received anything in that regard. Anything he was able to find out. But again, it's simply informational and or discussion orientated and awareness for all involved and for consideration, I guess, going forward. Councillor Bruin.
What this time all they're asking is for is a letter of
Correct.
support.
That's correct, yeah.
With that, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
Council authorizes a letter of support and motion to be sent to the Honorable Jason Kenney, Premier of the Province of Alberta, and the Honorable Tyler Shandro, Minister of Health for the Province of Alberta, as follows. You don't need to hold that read, I don't imagine.
I think we'll be fine with that. All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.5, procurement policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I'm going to call Mr. Orwa back. This is a fairly significant policy and procedure that guides a lot of what we do every day in our purchasing of materials and equipment. Important that we get this one right. So no rush on passing this in one evening if you have questions and you'd like us to work on a few things. Mr. Orwa, can you present the changes?
Thank you very much, members of council. Again, this is one of those policies that has not been reviewed over a very long period of time, and of course it touches on our procurement. And you can see we would also we're trying to align and make sure that we ensure compliance with our MGA. At the same time, we also have to align it with our procurement strategies. So there are key components, key changes here that have been made. I would highlight a few. And I would like to also to say before council that this was worked diligently behind the scenes by. Can you join me, please? Yeah, she's really worked hard on this policy for the last 6 months, and we'll just go through a few areas, and I would also give an opportunity to add some steps. Now, one major key change that is out there, I would refer you to number 5. Which is award, process, and authorization. Now, if you read through there, the procurement process will be followed as per the established procurement policy and procedures, but the administration will approve and award as per delegated authority. Only procurement awards over 75,000 that are outside the approved budget will go to council for approval. So that's one key changes compared to what we had previously. And probably that is one area of probably where I thought maybe there could be some questions from council for clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Orwa or Ms. Parsons. What was the previous process? 75,000, but what was it before? Was there a $5,000 number or a $10,000 number, or was there any number?
So, are you referring to the ones that are approved by council?
Mr. Mayor, through Ms. Parsons. Nope, number 5, outside of council.
So anything over 75,000 went to council, regardless of whether it was with or without, or inside or outside of budget.
It's always been that way, correct? So you want to change that?
Right.
Why?
Well, the biggest thing, we talked about this a number of times, and we talked about it in terms of administration and the time and the effort put in. So as an example, in 2019, I have put together 44 RFPs, tenders, those kinds of things, all of which probably 40 to 50% have come to council because they were over $75,000. And not once in 2019 have you gone against our recommendation. So in terms of the time and effort put into that, to do that, we assume that part of us assumes that I am doing my job well, or the folks in the recreation department or planning or public works that we're evaluating appropriately and it's being approved by the directors. And so the time and effort to do that.
If I may add to that, Mr. Mayor, there's another reason besides the time and effort to this, and the details go back to the council retreat. You remember the individual that we had that put on that retreat for us. We talked about this at that retreat. And what happens when you tender something? It's a situation of what they call contract A and contract B. So a tender is a promissory note to whoever submits on that tender, that tender will be awarded to the individual that meets the spec and has the lowest price. So your administration is essentially duty bound, or council is essentially duty bound, regardless of who puts in the tender for the technical specifications that we ask for at the lowest price. We're obligated to award them that tender. And when you are not going in that direction, you are facing the real danger of buying something for the individual who met those specs and for the lowest price, and for whoever you want to give the award to. So that's a reality of whoever awards those tenders. But that was a discussion that was had at the retreat, that was a bit of administrivia that administration could take off of council's plate, because essentially council is duty bound to award the tender to whoever we indicate through that tender, through performance and price and technical specifications. Whoever meets that, we're obligated to give it to them. And that comes from the external legislation on governing tenders and case law.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chavez.
Your Worship, I have some questions about this as well. So under local preference there, and I'll just read the second part of the paragraph here. When not prohibited by legislation, legal requirements, or trade agreements, if a local source of supply can be found that can render the town of Taber as good a value as can be located elsewhere, it will be supported. Preference shall be given to suppliers operating from taxable property within the town of Taber. But there's no guideline as to is it $1? Is it $100? Is it $1,000? I mean, at what level do we give consideration to a town of Taber supplier? Like, should we have or can we have a value in there?
No, it's not recommended that you do, to be honest. All of the national agencies, the National Institute of Government Purchasing, PMAC, they do not recommend local preferences. However, having said that, in our procedure, what we are encouraging is that anything under $25,000, that if there's a local source of supply, that we give a local preference. So based in the procedure. Now, in the policy, we've just said, we've left it very general in terms of local supply, because if you go to any of the trade agreements, once you start dealing with $75,000 and above for materials, or $200,000 and above for construction agreement, then you have no choice. You cannot give local preference at all. When we looked at some of the other municipalities and what they were doing for local preference, the only one that I was able to find anything on local preference was the town of Canmore. And what they say on local preference is that purchases from a business registered as being based in the town of Canmore may be preferred if, in the case of goods and services, the value is below $75,000 up to the trade agreements. In the case of construction contracts, the value is below $200,000 as per the agreements. And best value for money is obtained, and the quotation, proposal, or tender is within 5% of the lowest qualified alternative. The other ones do not. Any of the other ones that we looked at did not specify local preference.
So they I gather from what you just read there, so they have a 5% guideline that if it's within 5%, so if the lowest bid is 100,000 and it's 105,000, then they can give preference to a local bid then? Is that what I gather? Is that what that 5% comes in at?
That's what it says here. Now what they do in practice, I don't know, but it does say if in those cases the quotation, proposal, or tender is within 5% of the lowest qualified alternative.
That's something that we could adopt in here as well.
I think you could. I mean, you could. I think you're opening yourself up to perhaps some legal ramifications based on Mr. Armfeld's comments earlier to do with tendering law.
Understand you guys are trying to keep us out of jail and all, but you know, I still have a hard time.
To deal with local vendors, and we do everything in our power to try and encourage them to be part of the process and to be competitive. And wherever there is, you know, that's why we suggested in the procedure that anything under 25,000, you don't need to go outside of local as long as there is a local vendor. And the only time you would need extra quotes is if there's more than one competitive bidder in the local business area.
But in essence, we could drive that figure up to 75,000 as well. How do you feel about that? Do you feel comfortable with that? Or I know you've done a lot of investigation in this and you got to be comfortable with it. But
am I comfortable from a professional perspective? No. Am I comfortable for the town getting the best bang for their buck? Not necessarily. I'd rather work with the vendors on and have them be more competitive. So, you know, to go up to 75,000, I think is too high. If you wanted to go higher, I mean, it's your decision. What I'm comfortable with, I'm just going to do what you ask me to do. But no, I'm not comfortable with it, to answer your question.
Thank you. Mr. Becker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to go back to the award process and ask a scenario. From what I understand from Mr. Armfeld's comment and the retreat lady, I forget her name, if there's an approved project for 2020 for $1 million, it will go to tender. There's nothing council can do about it. That's kind of the basic gist I get out of this, and I disagree with that totally. But am I right?
No. So if there's $1 million project, administration through this has the of issuing a request for proposal or a tender. If a tender is selected, and an example is the trout pond, the work that was just done at the trout pond. So that we issued that on a request for proposal. And a request for proposal, when you evaluate those, they are a little bit more subjective. If you go the route of a tender, there is no subjectivity there. It is extremely black and white. You have issued your promise to whoever responds to that tender that meets the specifications, and if they have the lowest price, you will award that job to somebody who has answered that tender call. So that's the concept of the contract A, contract B. If you issue contract A through the tender process, you are getting yourself obligated to issue contract B to the lowest bidder who meets the specifications. But there's different ways that we can acquire work, and the different ways is either a tender or a request for a proposal.
Mr. Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Armfeld. I fully understand the difference between RFP and a tender. There's no doubt about that. But who decides to go where, RFP or tender?
That's essentially administration's decision.
That's exactly what I mean, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
If I could add to that, it's usually based on the information you have. So as an example, if you have a clear set of specifications where it's gone to engineering, you've got issued for construction drawings, as an example, you would probably go to tender. If you're issued for bid drawings, you would probably go to tender. If you don't have any drawings, you're just saying, well, we want to kind of do this, and we want to have using the trout pond as the same example. We want to have 9 RV spots, and we want this, and we want the ability to expand, but we don't have issued for bid drawings. We haven't had it engineered. We would probably go to RFP, and we would create a point system.
Mr. Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Parsons. So another scenario, if I may. 56th Avenue extension is budgeted for 2020, $2.5 million, whatever it is. So from what I understand, that once it's affixed within that budget of 2020, then it must go ahead. The council cannot change his mind. Am I wrong here?
No, that's correct. It must go ahead. So our administration's commitment to council is that once council passes that capital plan, I am held accountable to meet that capital plan. So if you pass the capital budget with 56th Avenue in 2020, and that does not happen, then I'm the guy that's held to account for that non-performance.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. I'm sorry to belabor this. This really concerns me because let's say in January, council decides through some unforeseen circumstance, which just happened, the police station blew up or whatever, we say, we're going to cancel that allotted $2.5 million for 56th Avenue. We're going to take it off the budget, even though it's been approved, and we're going to put that towards a new police station. Can we do that?
Absolutely. That's a capital budget amendment. And that can happen at any time.
All right. Any other questions? Councillor Firth.
I didn't have a question, just a comment that I thought it was very thorough and comprehensive, and I especially appreciated the addition and the clear definition of local preference in there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Tams.
I have a couple of questions. When you're talking about that, you're talking about the purchasing through the RMA and the AMA and Affinity. Who is Affinity and what is that?
The Affinity programs include things like grader blades, culverts. There's about 4 or 5 different categories within the Affinity groups. They include standing offer agreements, and mostly for the large items would be culverts, grader blades, some of those.
It's managed through who?
Through RMA.
That's through the RMA, that program. Okay. And the AMA no longer exists, so it's all through the RMA then, right? And then I have...
The reason the AUMA is in there is because of the P-card program, which is managed, which is also part of the policy.
The credit card program.
Sorry?
The credit card program?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then my other concern is that the procurements only over 75 will be coming to council, and I have some concerns with that. I really think we need to think that one through a little bit, but just a thought.
Councillor Chavez.
Your Worship, there's by no means that we have to approve this tonight. This document tonight. We can reflect upon this and bring it back and have some more discussion on it. I can see that there's several of us that have some questions, so maybe we should entertain a motion to table it for another month or another 2 weeks or something. How does the rest of the council feel about that?
Table until after the AMA convention.
After the AMA convention?
Yep. I'd like to defer it till after, no tabling, defer it till after the AMA convention.
First meeting in October?
Yeah.
You're making that motion, Councillor Chavez? Or are you?
Okay.
Are you making a motion, period, or this?
Well, you or me or Mr. Tams, Councillor Tams, would you like to make that, or would you like?
I'd like to make a motion to defer this till the first meeting in October.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Bruin.
What do we need administration to come back with for this? Like, what are we asking? What do they need to show us more? What are our questions? Our thoughts? I'm just wondering why. What are we thinking?
Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this motion is proper, and Mr. Armstrong indicated as such a little while ago. It's not in a big hurry to be approved. I'd like a little more clarification on the award. I might be all wet here. The award process authorization, I'd like to have a better presentation on that because I don't fully understand it yet, I don't think. Because last thing I want, Mr. Mayor, for administration to be able to go ahead with an approved budget without any input from council to change their mind on some aspects of it.
All right. Just for clarification, Mr. Armfeldt, do you need something specific within that motion?
No, I think we've heard you tonight, and I think what we'll do is we'll bring back a report just on that piece, what's currently happening now beyond $75,000, and then what our proposal is beyond $75,000. I think if we hit the details right, you'll get the clarity that you need out of that, I'm pretty sure. And then you'll be able to tell us to go one way or the other from that.
All comfortable with that? Yeah. Okay. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.6, legal services, Mr. Armfeldt.
Yes, Ms. Van Ham, she has prepared this one on administration's behalf, and essentially this is an update to our administrative services, obtaining legal services policy and procedure. Not much has changed other than some titles have been amended, and I believe that is essentially it. Is there anything else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through to council, the fire chief has also been added on there to stay with the director level, obtaining legal services.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Strovis. I read through this, and to me, all requests for legal service must be approved by the CAO, correct? Thank you.
All right, Councillor Strauss?
Yes. I know when I first got on council that we used to use a firm out of Lethbridge, and I see here that now it's only Baldry Sugden and then to Brownlee. There's no intermediate in there, and I know Brownlee does good work, but I think there should be if Baldry Sugden can't handle something, there's probably more cost-effective lawyers out of Lethbridge that could probably handle that without going all the way to Brownlee. I don't know what happened, but I know that when I got sworn in by Stringham Denicky when I got into council, and I don't see us being used, like we seem to have Tabor, and then we seem to go directly to Brownlee.
Just for clarification, I think, Mr. Armfeld, we haven't been using Brownlee that much, have we, in the last
So
year or
the
so?
local contact that was formerly used was Stringham Denicky. They had an office here in Tabor, and they still do, and they have an office in Lethbridge. So that was the relationship between Tabor and Lethbridge and the procedure of where they're actually located. We have started to use Baldry Sugden, Brandon Gibb, for many of the more rudimentary land sales, typical sorts of things, and they're located in Tabor. And for the more challenging, higher level contractual relationships between municipalities or public-private partnership sorts of contractual arrangements, then we have gone to Brownlee.
So, Your Worship, for clarification, so then if we're buying a piece of property from a local vendor here in town that's using Baldry Sugden, then do we use Brownlee on that other note?
Rarely, only if they're unwilling to represent both parties. Generally, what they'll do is they'll get us to sign an agreement that indicates that we're okay with them representing both parties, and we move forward like that.
So if we run into a problem, Mr. Armfeld, then there's a conflict. Then do we go to Brownlee, or can we insert a Lethbridge company in this rather than going to Brownlee?
Well, actually, what you're talking about is the procedure, which is the administrative side of it, which is the side that I look after. So that is on the agenda for your review, but that is not really what you get to mess around with. You get to mess around with the policy. And if you're happy with the policy, the implementation of that policy is my responsibility through the procedure.
Just to clarify, you're dealing with the expertise requirements, right? For the different requirements we have, that's the difference.
I want to make sure that whoever we engage to do town work is doing town work to their ability level and is going to give us the best price and a high quality. And that's what we evaluate depending on where we direct that legal traffic to.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Just a question. This doesn't limit us just to these two lawyers. We can still hire another lawyer at any time we wish, right?
Absolutely. And we do. So there are lawyers that are not listed on this procedure, which I work with through specific HR matters. And I believe it is at 12C of the procedure that allows me to go outside of those two specifically named lawyers' firms for things that are special that perhaps neither of them can deal with, or that are of such a significant order that maybe Brownlee has a conflict because we are going to be engaging somebody that they already have as a client themselves. So there are times that we have to step outside of the procedure, and that's what you trust your administration to do.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Garner?
No, I'm just prepared to make a motion
All
at
right.
this time. The motion I make is that council adopts the legal services obtaining legal advice policy ADM-1 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So you're opposed?
I'm opposed.
All right. One opposed. Carried. All right, on to item 6.7, amended social media. Mr. Armfeld.
Yeah, there's been a number of changes here. Again, doesn't have to be passed this evening. If you would like to have some discussion and a few edits, Miss Megan Brennan will be presenting her additions.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan.
So the social media internal organizational usage policy is up for its prescribed review. And so I took this opportunity to add some more details and clarity to our process with social media and is prescribed through our communications plan. It provides more clarity for you as council as to how social media can be dealt with. And the only thing that is sort of new, especially in southern Alberta, is the election section that you'll notice, which I actually adapted from a U.S. municipality. So there's a push for what we've seen through the digital age, that social media can be hijacked during elections. I think you've seen it in the news. You know that it can happen, and it can happen on the municipal level as well. So what this municipality did, and they found quite successful, is they set a certain date at which they stopped sharing information regarding the current council. So for example, after August 31st in this policy, if if the mayor goes and cuts a ribbon somewhere, we as the municipality wouldn't share that on our social media because it's a month before the election and you don't want voters to, and sorry to use the mayor as the goat here, the scapegoat, but you wouldn't want residents to see that and go, oh, well, you know what, that's good enough, so we won't even consider the other candidates. It provides neutrality during an election. So our focus during an election on social media through this policy will be sharing information about the election, where to vote, how to vote, ID that you need, not about candidates currently running, and that would also include councillors that currently sit. So that's quite a significant change to this policy. And there is no precedent here in Southern Alberta for that. I'll be upfront and honest with that. That came from a United States municipality. So other than that, if council has any questions or recommendations for that policy, I'm happy to hear them.
All right, thank you. Questions are raised? Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to Megan here. Item number 10, it's got a lot of yellow there. Are all these new guidelines? And it's about council members who use social media. Is that all new? Because it's all highlighted, so I was assuming that's all new written in.
It is brand new, but it is current processes that you use. But in our communications plan, we outlined that council needed more. There needed to be more written direction as to what council's role with social media, so that's why it's in there.
Another question. You made mention about a ribbon cutting. So that's a month before. So if we got a big new industry that comes to town, there would be no official representation from council at that ribbon cutting if for, say, there's a big $10 million plant with, and that's opening up a month. So we wouldn't be able to attend that? Is that?
No, that's not what this policy states. It states that we wouldn't post it on our social media. So we wouldn't post a picture with all of you at this grand opening, for example. That's all that this addresses. You would continue to carry out your duties. It's just if there's a photo, we wouldn't share it because our editorial calendar for the month prior to an election deals solely with the election. So in the rare circumstance that large event might happen, we could certainly, there are provisions within this policy that we could override that, the CAO could override that, or by resolution of council, but it does not stop council from doing their official duties. It just stops administration from sharing that in the name of neutrality.
Follow-up question then, so would the mayor, seeing as you brought the mayor up, would he be able to post that on his own social media that he did? So it's just on the official site that he
The
can.
town of
But
Tabor official ones, yes.
Mr. Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also had that concern, probably more so because of the arbitrary date, August the 1st, which is actually about 11 weeks before an election, right? Because election is usually October.
Pardon me, Councillor Beckering, if there's a mistake in there, but I believe it was August 31st.
Oh, okay. I didn't read it.
I'll just double check that for you, but I believe I put August 31st because I understand council is Cornfest is a large event in our community, so I chose August 31st as the date after Cornfest, and September would start our election communications cycle. That's why August 31st was the date chosen.
Yep.
Any other questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that council adopts a social media internal organizational usage policy ADM-7 as presented.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, on to item 6.8, naming rights policy procedure. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, and this is coming out of the Recreation Department. I believe this is at the Rec Board at the last meeting. Was it, Ms. Phillips? No? No, it was not? Okay, we didn't do that then.
Because we did the naming delegation.
Ah, okay. Good call. Sorry, I'm confused. So this is coming straight to council as a policy and procedure, and Ms. Phillips, please give us an explanation of it.
Ms. Phillips.
I did indicate that as an alternative, is that it could go back to the rec board from here. So the proposed naming rights policy is being presented as part of the strategic plan initiative to review and update town policies and procedures. This policy replaces the parks naming policy number 57092396. The scope has been expanded to include town facilities and infrastructure to be a more comprehensive approach. And the policy attached is for your consideration with some proposed fees, a proposed fee guideline, which is actually located in the procedure.
All right. Questions arising? Councillor Strauss.
So, Your Worship, to administration here. So you've got naming rights guidelines, and with fees there. So you're saying, for somebody to want to name a ball diamond, it would be $20,000?
Yes, that one was actually based. We did some research on several naming policies in other communities, but they're all over the place, and a lot are for newer facilities. That one in the Lon Ferguson Ball Diamond was named Lon Ferguson for $15,000, but that was over 20 years ago, technically, which has technically expired actually. But so we kind of went with that. That was kind of the guideline that started it, where we were at with previous sponsorship, which was minimal that I could find. But
a follow-up question. So if somebody wanted to name a ball diamond and say, well, they looked at the policy, well, gee, I got to come up with $20,000. So would that then, therefore, would that turn away somebody that would only pay $5,000 or $8,000? Like, could we still consider that, or would they just look at that and say, well, gee, I would spend $5,000, but I'm not going to spend $20,000?
I believe that would we put a lot back to council's discretion. It was more the fees as a guideline to give that direction.
So then would any proposal then come back to council automatically without a rejection or a letter back and say, no, the fee is $20,000?
I believe that was the intention, is that it would all come to council. Yes. It would be council's discretion on any naming. I believe the idea was to create maybe some consistency.
Yeah, it was just, Your Worship, back to Councillor Struvis. It was a way that administration could evaluate a proposal and provide council with some direction on anything that comes through the door. But council would be the exclusive body that is naming any of the facilities and at the sponsorship value so chosen. Administration would have nothing to do with the actual naming or the value attached to that.
Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does this policy include, or the procedure include, a thing called compassionate naming, you know, to reward some person who's done some really, really good things in the community, to name a room after him or her, or some part of a building?
Yes, in the policy statement number 2, council will include considerations for financial benefit and or to celebrate a prominent local individual organization. So it does leave the discretion to council.
And I would suggest, because I do kind of like the policy, I had some concerns about the numbers, but after you explained that it still comes, I would think that this would have to be solely at the direction of council, not back through the rec board. Once again, it makes it a little tough on the rec board because there's dollars and cents, and I think it needs to, it's a town policy and would have to be solely a council policy is where it really belongs.
All right. Anything else arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council approves the naming rights policy PS Rec 6 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Broom.
I think part of the cost for the sponsorship in-kind work in the community, and that could be considered as a donation worth, in most cases, a lot more than what you're asking for, that maybe not be easily recognizable. So I like this, the way if it comes back to council, I can strongly support it.
Right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.9, Engineer and Public Works Communication. Mr. Armfeld.
Yeah, so the Public Works staff is looking to go towards use of radios for their communication. Mr. Lahiji, is this one yours? We had them on the program of utilizing some iPhones that actually Alla had acquired for us a couple years ago for free, and they had been using those iPhones to communicate. Now it's my understanding that those are a little bit more cumbersome than what they are looking for. With the change to the AFRAX radio system with the police and fire, a number of radios became available. So they, Public Works staff, saw those available radios and thought they could put them to use. So that's essentially why we've created this policy and procedure for council's consideration. Mr. Lahiji?
So pretty much it, and we were few months ago, Tabor Police and Fire upgraded, and we took over this. We found this opportunity, and we are going to use this radios instead of our cell phones, and they'll be more practical, and there won't be any contracts, and the monthly usage fee, there won't be any monthly usage fee either. So we would like to go ahead with these.
All right, Councillor Towns.
You said that no monthly use, so there's no licensing fee for these radios?
No monthly. There's a one-time license fee for the tower and the radio. Yes, there is.
That fee roughly be? That's one time, or is it yearly? So then the cell phones that we're currently using, won't be using the cell phones, we'll just be using these two-way radios?
Councillor Broom.
Mr. Mayor, just observation, if we're going to go with the two-way radios, they'll only be able to communicate when they're in the vehicle, right? So if they're down working in a trench, they have to come out to communicate, or are these portable radios? Oh, they carry the radios. Okay, they're not just mounted in vehicles.
They are portable.
Okay, that makes more sense if they're portable, yes. Thank you.
Councillor Towns.
Go back to that. Now that you say that, now it's portable radio, so now we are encouraging our employees as they're driving in a vehicle to be talking on a portable radio where they're going to have to push a button, and it's now would be distracted driving, whereas with a cell phone, the vehicles we have are going to be equipped with Bluetooth. Are we actually encouraging our employees now to run distracted driving?
Are you that Mr.
Armfelt?
Mr.
Yeah.
Armfelt.
There are health and safety regulations that we expect our employees to follow, and being aware while driving and not distracted driving is one of those health and safety regulations that we expect them to follow. We've had extremely good rates of health and safety, lack of incidents over the last little while. So I can attest to the fact that our employees get it, that we have instilled a culture of safety here at the town. And anybody that was using their radio while they were driving, I think they know that wouldn't be looked upon favorably by management, and there would be some repercussions to that. So, I mean, like anything unsafe that we try to, through culture and through policy and programs, encourage people not to do, this is just one of them where you'd encourage them to use these radios in a safe manner.
Yes, Your Worship, and to the administration here. I mean, technology has advanced to where everybody's using a cell phone. So is this a step backwards in technology and in usage? You know, because cell phones are the way of the world now, and now we're going back to radios.
I can answer that.
Mr. Towns.
I think it's polar the opposite, because more and more companies and institutions that have this many vehicles and employees on the road are actually going back to radios because it works way better.
Thank you for the clarification.
Just for another clarification to ask, is this strictly for handheld radio and or something in the vehicle radio as well, or not?
It's strictly handheld.
Strictly handheld we're talking. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Councilor Brown?
Just a point to add, I think there are some exemptions for using two-way radios we'd have to look into for all driving.
That could be. We're going to follow the rules, and we are going to operate safely. And this is a request that has come from the Public Works Department. This isn't something that senior management is imposing on anybody. They like to use these two-way radios because they can operate them with gloves on. And when it's minus 20 and they don't want to take their mitts off to type a text message, I can feel their pain, that it's easier just to talk into a radio.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council approves the Engineering and Public Works Radio Communications Policy PS-PW-5 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 610, amended compliance certificate policy. Mr. Armfelt.
Yeah, we've got a number of policies for review or repeal here over the next number of agenda items. Ms. Monks, this one's yours. You want to come up and hit this one?
Your Worship, members of council. So as directed in this strategic plan, we're working towards updating our policies and procedures, and the planning department is looking to ensure the existing practice used in the department is reflected in this policy. So currently when a homeowner applies for a compliance certificate, which is required as part of the process to buy or sell a home, if there's a real property report on their land file that is relatively recent and no changes have been made on the lot and their lender or opposing legal representative will accept it, the planning department has requested that the homeowner signs a statutory declaration confirming that this is the case and they've made no changes. This provides us with a level of protection for ensuring that legally we've covered our bases, but still provides a better level of customer service for the homeowner by saving them the cost of having to have a new survey completed. So with the update to this policy, we would request that council accept this change to our policy and procedure.
Councilor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through Ms. Monks, excellent. That's all I can say. A stat deck will cover all sins. Right? So I'm prepared to make a motion.
Councilor Garnett had a question.
I'll make that motion and say hallelujah before I do. So I think it's a good move.
You can't say that.
I did. The motion I would make is that council adopts the compliance certificate policy and procedure PLN-01 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 611, policy proposed for repeal. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I believe. Oh, okay, Mr. Orwa. No, Erica. Come on up, Miss Dam. This is one that's coming out of the finance department that's unnecessary. It's covered in the utility bylaw.
So I will give that one over to the intern of the finance officer to present the two repeal policies.
Right. Thank you,
Yes,
Ms. Dan.
thank you, members of council. So administration is requesting council to repeal policy 286-97 because the original contents are already covered in the utility bylaw under section 5.35.
Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Further make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that council repeals disrupted services policy 286-97.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 612, policy proposed for repeal as well. Mr. Armfield.
Miss Dam.
Yes, so once again, administration is asking council to repeal policy 10S-791130 because the original contents are already covered in the utility bylaw under section 4.13.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Brown.
Prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that council repeals requested utility disconnections policy 10S-791130.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 613, policy for repeal. Mr. Armfield.
These have been provided to myself and to council through the police chief. I believe he had to step out. If there's any questions on any of these, you can for sure ask me and I'll facilitate that response from the police chief. Other than that, they are all obsolete and they are all good to be repealed. If you go through that list 1 to 5, we ask that you pass one motion for each policy.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Towns.
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make the first motion that council repeals the cat trapping policy 3MC-5/13-91.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Second motion requirement. Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council repeals the handling of dog tickets received from town office policy 2MC-83926.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third motion, Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council repeals the parking tickets policy 74M-85114.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the fourth required motion, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council repeals the police station phone calls policy 52S-82712.
Motion on the
That's a
table.
weird thing.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the fifth required motion, Councillor Garner.
I make a motion that council repeals the release of dogs from pound policy 1MC-8457.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 614, standing item council request. Mr. Armfield.
This is the opportunity that council gets to ask administration any questions that you may wish or give us any direction through the form of a motion.
All right. There's nothing outstanding, correct, right now?
There is one item. We are waiting on a quote with regards to the 20 trees with the motion from Councillor Garner that's on the screen right now. Number 2, and also directs administration of 22 trees transplanted with a minimum root ball of 24 inches into said park. We are just waiting on a quote. Likely what we'll do is we'll bundle all that motion back up and bring it back to council just to make sure that everybody's good with what the final number comes out to. That's the only thing that's really outstanding. We're just waiting on a quote for that.
All right, thank you. Any standing items? Councillor Stravas?
Your Worship, it's not really a request. It's a bouquet to staff. I've had lots of individuals tell me about the Versat Hockey School, how great it was run. The town staff looked after everybody tremendously, and the fact that they could park right along the facility there was tremendous. They thought it was, well handled, and lots of comments still coming in about Cornfest and how well Cornfest was run, and how cost effective it is for people coming from other communities. The relation was made a family of 5, a mother and father and 3 kids. It cost them $42 to get into the grounds in Lethbridge, and they can come here and use the facilities for they can get into the grounds for no cost. So those are bouquets to the staff for how well they handle things and their cooperation working with the rest of the community and pulling off these events. And we offer a thank you, and just so you know that people are seeing this and they are acknowledging it.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, just further to Mr. Strovas' comments there, the Verzette hockey school is fantastic. Came off very well for them. But the concerns I got from them was they didn't have a confectionery. And I would like to suggest that we have administration look into the cost of upgrading our kitchen facilities at the Civic Center. Making it so that someone's willing to rent it and it's open for these events.
Okay, so you've got a specific motion to say that?
Well, discussion if you wish, if anyone's in favor of that, but I think that facility's in need of some upgrades.
Okay, I guess that's just a question about that's 1 week out of the year.
Numerous occasion with the summer events that are being held at the arena now. It's getting to be a year-round facility with this pickleball and the field hockey they're playing. I think it's we should be promoting that and make sure we have a good facility there.
Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Councillor Bruin's concern, but I think there's 2 issues here, right? Confectionery open or not, and upgrades. So there's 2 different issues. I believe Councillor Bruin that perhaps we should be on the agenda for a future meeting in the near future to discuss this.
Thank you, Mr. Beckering. Agreed.
All right, so are you...
If we can, do you need a motion that we put it on a future agenda, or we can just...
Just to clarify with Mr. Armfeld, do you need something like that for that purpose, or have you got the basic gist?
Yeah, administration can prepare a report on that and have it on a subsequent meeting agenda, for sure.
Perfect, thank you. Anything else? Standing item requests. All right, seeing none, no other motion required, correct, Mr. Armfeld?
Not if council doesn't have anything.
All right, we will move on to our delegations. Item 7.1, Tabor Golf Club requests. Mr. Armfeld.
So there are 3 gentlemen here from the Tabor Golf Club looking to make a presentation to council. Mr. Rick Tams, Mr. Jim McDonald, and Mr. Gordon Moore. I'm not sure which one is speaking, but come on up, fellas, and have your discussion with council.
I'm Jim McDonald. I'm the Vice President of the Tabor Golf Club. A couple of our councilors here for questioning. We're coming to council out of probably economic necessity. Probably would be the best way to put it. We've been a part of this.
Mr. Mayor, is our live streaming off for a reason?
Oh, no, it's not. I just put that down because I didn't want anybody confused with an RFD there. I seem to have had the opposite effect. We're still live streaming, correct?
Yeah. Oh, that's quite all right, Lou. We've been a part of the Tabor community, Tabor and the district, the municipal district of Tabor recreation mix for quite some time. As you know, the course is owned by the town. We operate as a volunteer board, have for 40 some years now, and we feel we've done quite well at getting a fairly high quality recreational facility for Tabor. Over the past few years, we've worked hard to try to keep the course at high standards and keep our course very good for the area. But economic reality in our area is the oil patch is down, and the golfing community is becoming a little bit more aged, and it is making it very, very hard for us to make ends meet these days. Revenue has been declining steadily for a few years, and unfortunately expenses are escalating as things go on. Now, as a volunteer board, we have done very well over the years in keeping everything very much under check. But right now, we're running into some issues that we are going to have some major problems coming up into the future. You know, our groundskeeping, facility maintenance, things like this are going to be in a decline here fairly shortly. So we have tried to exercise every grant we can possibly get. We are getting help from the Alberta Gaming Commission through casinos money. We have been, you know, looking at local sponsorships. We have corporate sponsorships. We have various sign programs. We're doing everything possible and to continue to keep operating our course. But it's getting to be the point right now that we are coming into some equipment difficulties, that we are asking for assistance from the town and the MD of Taber to help us to purchase a couple of mowers that unfortunately we're, you know, on our own, we're probably not going to be able to quite afford. Now, unfortunately, we do feel bad we have to come to council with this, but we are a major mix in this town, in the recreational facilities, and the volunteer board has done very well over the years, but unfortunately, we are requesting some help at this time. Now, I'd like to turn things over to Rick for a little bit, who can give you a few more details on what we're looking for. Rick?
Sure. Is this called the hot seat? So, yeah, I'm here on behalf of the board, and we struck a committee to come to both the town and the MD to talk about why this has happened and what we do specifically need. You should know that Jim pointed out quite rather well that we have been a great part of the community and the MD. And there is a bright spot in there because our board got together and said we would like to include more kids. For the first time ever, we couldn't hold a junior tournament this year because we actually had 10 times the normal amount of kids come to this tournament. So that was like, we had 46 kids come. Now they've been mandated to golf for free. We did find some donations to help pay for that. And so we are including way more of the kids in a youth program. And our center is, you know, it's for seniors. It's a huge recreation area in the town and the MD. So one of our problems was mowers to that golf course are specialized. I brought our financials, which I'll turn over to Corey, and that's for the last 3 years. I don't have a set to the current ones to hand you, but I can tell you that we're down again because it's just simply in green fees. Like, we're just not getting green fee players enough to come. So in a clear conscience, we are going to pay off our long-term debenture with you guys this year, but we can't borrow the money on the 2 lawnmowers that we need in a clear conscience because we couldn't afford to pay them back with our financials, and we're working toward it. We have had, and I would like to go through this, we didn't really want to renovate our building. We'd asked if you guys wanted to come and have an open house there or see, but the community stepped up. They bought all kinds of stuff. It's not what we wanted to do. We have equipment needs worse than a building need, but they renovated it and it was done and paid for by our community. So we need 2 lawnmowers, and they're very specialized. And the one we have right now is 4,500 hours old, roughly. And they, the people that maintain these are special Rio mowers. There's absolutely no more metal for them to sharpen. So once they're done this time, they're actually unusable. The other one is our rough cut mower, and it's just plain and simple wore out. So we had talked with our group, and we are coming to the town, and we are going to the MD, and we're asking for some specific 50-50 help. I don't want to get into numbers like there's this many % from the town or the MD, but it's a really good mixture. And that shows in our corporate support list, and I will turn all that over to you. What simply we're looking for is the help with 2 mowers. These mowers, we have quotes for them. I don't know if you wanted us to bring them tonight, so we didn't. I can email them. they're not special. It's just they have to be a real mower for a fairway and a rough cut mower for the outside, and they are all told roughly about 110,000. Our group got together and we redid our banking this year. We can borrow the money ourselves. We can do it cheaper. We're paying less fees. We're cutting and wherever we can do it, but we need some help to pay for these things, and we're open to hear too. We know that it's going to be roughly 110,000 for these two mowers because they are specialized equipment, and we're asking the town to help with half. Now we can do that over 3-4 years because we can get our own financing. We just need some help from both parties equally to help pay for these. And if we can do that, we think long term, because we are working on things, we are trying to do and be fiscally responsible, period. We think it's important that we ask you guys to help, because in 3 years, the way it's going, we'll just give it to you. We'll borrow the money because we need the mower anyway. But then it ends up on the town's line. And I'm not doing this as a threatening thing. That's not how I mean it. We want to be, we don't like to be here either. We just don't. This wasn't our plan, but we need some help here. And so if you have questions as to what or how, I would like to give my financials. I'll hand them to Corey. He'll get them to you guys. And we have quotes. We'll share them also. But we need some help.
Mr. Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to Mr. Tamser. We have a copy of your financials in front of us here. It's included in our package. I have a question. The reels on those mowers, you just can't buy a new set of reels, cutting blades. I see you shaking your head, but explain that to me. I mean, if...
Excellent. So that's why Gordy's here, because he's on our Greens Committee, and I'm going to have him answer that question specifically for you.
Wait, for the reels?
I think you got to pop by.
For the reels, to replace them all under the one mowers, they say $12,000 for new heads and any bushings and everything else. But that doesn't to alleviate the problem of the hydraulic pump, the main hydraulic pump, your drive pumps on the wheels that they move it forward and back, and the hydraulic pumps on each reel. So we could go with the 12,000 and then get a new heads, and every time that you turn the key, you could have a hydraulic pump go. They're $4,500. There's 3 of them, and then on the hydraulic pump that runs the mowers, there's 5 of them. So they would actually, they won't even take it on trade. It is.
They won't give us a penny. They won't give us a penny for it.
Mr. Thames.
Just for fellow councilors' information, this presentation was also made by Jim Angor to the Rec Committee earlier this month when the Rec Committee met, and due to the fact that it's a request for money, that's the Rec Committee felt that it should be also made to the Town Council. Thus, they are back again for another kick at the can. And through their first presentation, number of questions, I get the fact that they're struggling, and the golf industry as a whole, not just in Taber, but the golf industry, Canada, North America wide, is struggling and is having a hard time. And as much as I'd like to say no money, but the reality is we have a golf course that is, and I really was quite impressed that they had taken their junior program and made it cheap. And when I asked the question, what that cost you out of your budget, and they suggested roughly around $3,000. But the amount of 14 and under kids that are golfing for free in this town, I was really impressed with the commitment by the golf club to do something to build a future generation of golfers. So, but this has been at the rec board, and thus it is also at the town. So it's information for councilors.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions, Red?
About the golf industry. Golf industry in North America is in a major decline. A lot of courses are closing. A lot of the numbers of golfing are dropping due to the aging population. It's getting young people involved, and that's why the course is trying to, making free golf for 14 and under and very cheap for students. And we're trying to build our course, but unfortunately right now with the decline in the oil patch industry, we've lost a lot of our donors and sponsors, and that makes a big difference. So, you know, a lot of municipalities throughout North America are starting to take over their golf courses. A lot of them are, like, I know there's certain towns that are paying their golf courses management fees to help them out. This is not a problem just with Taber. This is a problem that's happening throughout the entire continent.
I'd like to add something there. Our population is changing. We're seeing more and more of the Mexican East Mennonite population, and they're not coming out to support us. And the reason I believe they're not coming out because we're not paying them. I don't want to use the word a fair wage. We're trying to get our work done as cheap as we can, and that is reflecting on their ability to support our communities. For instance, Vauxhall is now there's 65% of the population is a Mexican and Mennonite in the town of Vauxhall. So, at the same time that the population is there, they can't afford to come out and they support us, or any other rec stuff, hockey or any stuff like this, right?
First,
not to sound doom and gloom, but can you give me the worst case scenario? What happens if you guys can't raise these funds?
Excellent
to replace these
question.
mowers?
There's two. We could try to run with what we got. We know it won't last all of next year. It's just simply, it's going to wear out. Every year you have to sharpen your blades on the specific mower that we were talking about. So at the end of this year, it will be mostly wore out and there'll be no metal left to do it. So we would have an option as a board, and that would be borrow the money and just say, well, it's going to come. And that wouldn't be good fiscally responsibility. Option B, we borrow it and things turn around and we are okay. I don't see that based on the way our financials and the way our cash positions have been. There isn't we can't use a different lawnmower. We can't make something else work for a fairway. It's a specialized piece of equipment. And rough cut mowers, although you guys mow grass in your town and lots of it, a rough cut mower on a golf course is even a different design piece of equipment. You'll notice when you drive into the town of Taber, and one of the things we do is we advertise for our town really well. You drive in from Barnwell and the first thing you see is a hill with really nice striping on it. Striping is not just for pretty, it's also for finding a golf ball. And I know that seems a little, but if anyone's golfed, the reason you hit it to an area and they're striped is you can actually see where you have to go in the general area to find your ball. Plus, the cut of that grass has to be very symmetrically accurate, although it's just grass, because it has to hold a ball on a fairway, and in a rough cut, you need that ball to be able to be findable so that if it just disappears and if it takes too long, then it closes up the speed that the people can play at, because there is a time thing to it. So it needs to be accurate, clean, and properly maintained. And with those mowers, it just has to be the way. We do intend to take this mower that's totally wore out, and we're going to pull all that stuff off it. And if we can, we're going to try to bolt a piece of equipment to the front of it and run it till it dies, picking up the balls from our from the driving range, so that it's like we're not just we're trying anything we can with any rock we can to turn over the money to help make it go. We also, and I don't know if that got ever explained, we did get a grant this year, but we're also neighbors to a lot of people there, and there was a couple ponds that were spelling. So we did get a grant, and we put aerators in so that the people's, and the smell and the muck that was there, we cleaned that up. It wasn't really what we wanted to do, but we have to be good stewards of what we have to take care of as well with the neighbors. Did I answer your question properly?
Yes, very thoroughly.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right, any other questions arising? Just a clarification question. Roughly, you said 4,500 hours for this one mower, but how many years would a mower like that last?
Good
on
question.
average?
We roughly use this mower 700 to 800 hours a year.
So 5-6 years you're going to get out of a
Yes.
mower like that, right?
The mower we're
Pretty much.
using is absolutely older. But
Okay. But just you can count on 5-6 years to
Yeah.
what you're saying for those kind of requirements.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And equipment does get newer, better. Like, you know, we're kind of hoping so.
Right. Yeah.
And
Councilor
and on
Stravas.
Just, you want to make a
And
comment?
on the rough mower, we got two of them. The one it will go to the boneyard, and we will rob a parts off it to keep the other one. So the one that's a better shape will keep being used, and the other one will be its parts for, and it could go on for like 5 more years. But we still need a new one.
Councilor Stravas.
Just a question, where were you going to source these mowers from?
There's only 3 manufacturers of golf cart products, that being Toro, John Deere, and Jacobson. There isn't a local supplier for any one of those things, so we went to the 3 people that are the dealers for that in Alberta, and we got a quote from every one of them.
So you can't use the local John Deere dealership for that, is what you're saying?
We would love to, but no, they are not the dealer for this John Deere stuff.
Kind of unfortunate, isn't it?
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah. I wish that we could go to some. Now, I can tell you that we do have tractors and other equipment and whatever we can. Our board takes that seriously. We make our living in this community, and so we want to make sure that it stays here. It's just simply not something that we could find locally. Do we have an affinity to any one guy's product, or no? No, we don't. We just need new stuff. That's where we're at.
Sir Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the delegation. Probably a question to Mr. McDonald. Have you considered going to your membership? I don't know how many members you do have. It varies from year to year, I'm sure. Going to your membership and on a one-time basis, perhaps ask for contribution towards the purchase of some equipment because it benefits them, and also, you know, I said to you, Mr. McDonald, last week, golf has in the past been very much an elitist activity. And I think as a politician, I'm unable to sell this to the average taxpayer in this town.
Well, I think the view of elitist is a little bit outdated now. Golf, if you look at our membership out there, you get a little bit of everything. You get pensioners, you get younger people, you get older people. It's not really what I would call an elitist sport anymore. The problem is with golf, there is a lot of expenses. You got to put water on there. We supply water for part of the Centennial Park, but the irrigation system's a huge expensive. Paying your staff, we have our budget is $1 million a year at the Tabor Golf Club, so the expenses are big. And our membership does their best. We charge as much as we possibly can. We charge more, we're going to lose more members. We wind up further in the ditch. And you charge too much for green fees. Unfortunately, we've been dropping our green fee revenue over the last few years, and that's more of a case of every course in Southern Alberta is in that same boat. You know, that it's not that one course is gaining from another. The overall numbers of golfers are dropping a bit. But it is a good recreation facility. You know, a lot of people are out for the walk. A lot of people are out for the sunshine. If you were by our course this weekend, you wouldn't believe how busy it is. But the numbers to run a golf course are getting massive. Like, we're $1 million budget a year. And, you know, we have been dipping into our cash reserves for 3 or 4 solid years now. Our management has been very good at cutting expenses, and we've cut expenses every year for 3 or 4 years now. It's not that we go out and we're being extravagant. We're just trying to maintain what we have. Now, you know, and we're trying to keep more people involved. We do, I think, do a lot to add to the town and the MD. You know, but I don't think it's as elitist as what it once was. You know, it used to be back in the 60s and 70s. It might have been looked as elitist, but not much anymore. We have all spectrums out at our course. The problem is, with the declining revenues and the increased expenses, You know, we've done an awfully good job over the years. We've got 40 years of good boards who have remained fiscally responsible. We're part of the recreation mix in this area, and we have not cost the town hardly anything over the years. Now that things have got a little bit tight, we're looking for a little bit of assistance. And I don't think what we're asking for is really out of line. You know, when you look at what it costs you to run other rec facilities here, we feel we're trying to be, the volunteer board is going to do everything we can to keep trying to pay our own bills. But it's just out of necessity with this equipment, we have to do this at this time.
Mr. Strauss.
Your worship, you know, one only has to listen to the radio to find out how many golf courses are advertising Toonie Tuesdays and $1 a hole, you know, Mondays, and you know the competition out there is fierce. That all the golf courses in southern Alberta are certainly feeling that brunt. You know, that golf course, you know, it does add a quality of life to the community for those people that do use it, and there are a lot of people that do use it, and it is a busy little course. But of course, costs are substantial, and you know, as we've got some businessmen here, I'm a businessman. You know, I've seen the decline in the business community of supporting the events because, you know, like the economy is down in our area. This is, you know, I struggle in my own business with trying to make ends meet, and I'm sure these guys struggle with it as well. It's better to keep the course run by a board of directors than the municipality to take it over and run it. So, you know, they're coming with their hat in their hand and they're asking for help. You know, and the alternative is that we don't give them and help in a year or two. The municipality is running the golf course. Is that the road that we want to go down? There's a fine line there that we got to take a look at, and you know, and maybe with some new businesses coming to town, and maybe a trend, a pickup back in the oil patch, maybe things will turn around in a couple of years. But in the shortcoming here, they're here and they need help.
All right, Councillor Thames.
I totally agree with you, Councillor Strovis, and I empathize with Councillor Beckering that, you know, that it's tough sell to sell a $55,000 lawnmower, but you know, I think that the golf course their request is for some help. And the possibility is, you know, maybe our job is not to give them $55,000 for a lawnmower, if that's, you know, the 50-50 split that they're talking about. Maybe our job is to look at this differently. Maybe as a town council, as a community, we could take over part of their, if you look through their financial statements, they have roughly $30,000 worth of utility bills. And there's probably their biggest utility bill is power bill because they're pumping their water and stuff. The possibility exists that maybe we as a town could take over the electrical of the golf course and the pump station. We're helping them out over a number of years. We can continue to help them out. They can finance their lawnmower. They said they didn't really want to go to their bank in good faith because they can't see how they're going to pay the loan. But if we took some of their debt off their hands, some of their expenses, we're helping them the same way. We're benefiting ourselves. We pump water out of them ponds to water our parks, our own Centennial parks. And if we looked at, you know, there's other ways that we could help them than an immediate check. Here's a check for $55,000. I think we can look at this in a number of different ways from a council perspective to help the golf course and to lighten their burden, which also preserves their board and they're doing what they're doing. I think there's more ways to look at it.
All right, Councillor Strauss.
Just a comment. You realize $30,000 a year for Infinity is way more money than purchasing the lawnmower.
Could well be.
And you know, and in correlation to that, I mean, we think nothing of going and buying new equipment for our own parks to keep our own grasses cut in our own parks looking good. So, you know, and that's a huge park out there. You know, how many people use that walking path, walk by it, and you drive into town and you see that. So there is a good correlation between that and a park.
All right, Councillor Beckering. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another question to Mr. McDonald, most likely. Because of the decline in the golf world in North America, and there's no doubt about that. It's been ongoing for probably half a dozen years, because golf is time and money, right? Lots of time, lots of money. And there's a decline. And it's not only economic, it's just a fact that it's not as popular as it was. Could you foresee if we would support you in some way, that you would stay alive, that some golf courses in adjoining communities, and every small town's got a golf course, would not get that support from their council, so therefore they'd shut down and die, and we would increase our business? Is there a possibility?
Well, there has been certain golf courses that have closed. There's been a lot of closures in golf courses throughout North America. But there's been a lot of instances where municipalities in the United States and a few in Alberta that I know of, that the municipalities have taken over the golf courses because they don't want to see them die, because they are a huge asset to their community. I do know of a certain small town in southern Alberta, they're paying their golf course $60,000 a year management fee. To give them $60,000, they call it a management fee, that they donate the money to the golf course. Councillor Joe, or the idea that Louis was talking about helping us out with bills, that would work for us. Whichever way, as long as we could free up some money that we could help make our payments. Now, unfortunately, we're not looking for something every year. We're looking for just, the help and the equipment right now. But that doesn't mean that someday we might not need additional help. But we believe we are a hell of an asset for, excuse my language, a really good asset for the town and the MD, for the entire area. But I do think that we are going to need some assistance as baby boomers get older. Our population is aging. That's probably one of the main reasons why we're down. That's part of it. We have to entice young people to start to utilize the sport, and we think we're making some good inroads. Especially, we really have thought making it free for under 14, getting kids interested, is really going to help us. We've lowered our price on our students. We're trying to get the younger people out and active and involved in it. But it's amazing how many people will come out just a few times a year. And any kind of recreation is good recreation, as far as I'm concerned. And we do get a lot of diverse people out at our golf course. We believe we're a big asset for this town.
All right, I'm going to take one more comment for yourself, and then we're
Yeah.
going to have to shut this down.
Into the States, they have a program, it's called a First Tee, and they're going in to challenge communities and turning their communities around by getting the kids involved and the parents involved with golf. I believe that golf is one of the few sports that it brings a true character of a person out. It's the only sport on the face of the earth that you actually call a penalty against yourself. Now, I don't believe it's better than any other sport. I believe any sport is good for kids, and getting them involved and getting them to set in the right course of life.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I think in all fairness, these gentlemen are also presented to the MD of Tabor tomorrow, I believe. Is that right? We are also meeting tomorrow?
Another week, I think.
Oh, okay.
23rd is around then.
Okay. We are meeting with the MD sometime soon also, so I think there needs to be some joint discussions, all things considered, in all fairness. So for now, I would suggest we take this for information. Somebody wants to make a motion in that regard? Councillor Garner?
I would make a motion that we appreciate you coming and making a presentation, that we take your information and we have heard you, and that we will reflect on it and we'll get back to you.
It's not a motion, that's a sermon.
That's a sermon too.
Accept it for information.
Just accept it as information.
Yeah, we'll accept your presentation as information.
All right.
Information purposes.
Motion on the table.
We can be called at any time for more information.
Okay.
All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you so much.
On to item number 8, media inquiries. Tabor Times, Trevor? All right. Glad you threw that in there.
To single me out, just say council.
All right, thank you. I would ask for a motion to break for 30 minutes.
Motion to adjourn and to
Oh,
open
yes.
closed session.
Yes, please, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn and for our break, and when we return, we move into closed session.
Oh, great, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I'm learning. Paying attention.
Old dog, new tricks.
Good, Al.